We are currently pulling up to Six Flags Magic Mountain. The sun is about to go down, and we are here for Fright Fest. I've been doing a series on memories of Magic Mountain, and I thought I would end that series with memories of Fright Fest. I thought we could come here, check out Fright Fest, and I would tell some of my stories of what it was like working here. So, let's go see what we can find. Well, I can already tell you one big difference that I see right off the bat. They used to decorate the outside of Magic Mountain as well, and that started in the parking lot. They always had that giant spider on Colossus, and that was kind of a staple of Magic Mountain during Halloween time, but they can't really do that anymore since they kind of messed up Colossus. Okay, so we just got inside the park, and this area too, this used to always be decorated. Like in the 90s, they just had skeletons in the trees and stuff like that, but then in later years, they had like some big volcano type things and a giant devil statue. There was all kinds of stuff going on here in the front of the park, but now there's nothing. You can't even really tell that it's Halloween time. So we're about to go into our first maze, and I'm not going to be filming the mazes tonight because that's something that I just want to enjoy with my son. Plus, there's a lot of other videos that you can find on YouTube of the mazes. But I did want to show this area really quick because I've talked about this area in all of my other Six Flags videos. Normally this area is now closed off to the public, and right over here, these are the flashback buildings. This is where Flashback used to be, and they now just open it during Fright Fest to have a maze in this building. And this used to be the Jokester's Hideout maze. But yeah, back in the 90s, just on the other side of these buildings was Flashback, and this is now all that's left. But so anyways, here's my first silly Fright Fest story. Now, like I already mentioned, throughout the years, I worked in a lot of different areas at Fright Fest. Even though my main area was up by Ninja, one year they had a scare zone right here in front of Jokester's Hideout, and this was my area for the year. Now, just over here to the right used to be the Warner Brothers Kids Club, which was a small theater where they had a kids show, and that year the monsters used that as a break room. Now, one night I'm sitting in the break room and I notice an adult-sized tricycle, and I go and I sit on it, and I commented that it would be really fun to ride this in the park and chase people, and my coworkers kind of laughed and dared me and said, you know, I wouldn't do it. And I said, you know what? Open up the gate. And I took off as fast as I could out of that gate and began chasing people. And to my surprise, people started running like crazy and screaming. They were terrified, and I have no idea why. And it was right about then that I looked over and I noticed two of my supervisors standing there watching me, and I thought, uh-oh. But then I noticed that they couldn't breathe because they were laughing so hard watching me chase people on this tricycle. I mean, it was really hilarious. I really wish someone would have took video of it. But right about then, the supervisor that ran the Warner Brothers Kids Club walked up. He marched up to me, told me to get off the tricycle. He took it away and then came back and sternly told me to never sit on that tricycle again. But yeah, for the rest of the year, people talked about it. You know, it was the big joke about me riding the tricycle. Fun times. So we're now entering into Bugs Bunny World. Hey, how's it going? And another big difference that I'm seeing is they never used to have this area decorated or have monsters in here. And we were actually always told that we would get in a lot of trouble and maybe even get fired if we ever came into Bugs Bunny World when we were in our makeup. This was considered like a safe zone. You were not allowed to scare people here, but I guess this is now maybe an actual scare zone. You can see right here, there's a monster scaring a small child in a stroller. Something that we weren't supposed to do back then, but I always did it anyways. So we're now approaching DC Universe, which used to be Gotham City, and Gotham City was a huge part of Fright Fest. There were really two main parts of Fright Fest, Gotham City and the Top of the Hill by Ninja. And there was a lot of legendary characters in Gotham City, like Heckles and Twitch, and the Gargoyles, and the Jester, and the Monkeys. So I'm really curious to see what it's like now. All right, so I see kids running out of this area, so that's always a good sign. But I gotta say, I'm not really seeing a lot going on. You know, back in the day, this area would be packed. You wouldn't even be able to like really comfortably walk through here, and you couldn't go more than like 10 feet without running into a monster. I've walked through half the area so far, and I haven't even seen a monster or a clown or anything yet. So All right, so I'm finally seeing, they have a clown like on stilts over here, and this is the first character that I've seen. So yeah, I don't really know what's going on. I feel like this area is definitely not as exciting as it used to be. Now, all the years that I worked here at Fright Fest, I only ever worked in Gotham City twice. One night they needed somebody to fill in as a gargoyle, and that was really fun. That was a totally different experience. And then they had me work a private party one year. Working in Gotham City was a totally different experience because it was kind of like being in a real life comic book. So I gotta be honest, I wasn't really impressed with DC Universe. But anyways, walking through this area is reminding me of how we used to have vans that would take us from makeup backstage to our areas in the park. But we used to like to walk through the park instead of riding in the van. And so we would walk through this area late at night after the park closed, and it would pretty much be deserted. There would just be like 1 or 2 people still exiting the park. And once the park closed, we weren't allowed to chase people. Of course, we didn't listen, and we would be chasing people all through this area and through the carnival games. And yeah, it was more fun chasing people after the park closed. Now, this is also something different that they're doing. They never used to have areas like this when I worked here. Now, this is considered a scare zone, and it's a gated off area that's got a bunch of walls kind of making a little maze, and there's scare actors in there that pop out and scare you, but it's not really a haunted house, so it's considered a scare zone. But when I worked here, all the scare zones were just big open areas with fog and actors. I'm now walking up that big steep hill on the way to Ninja, and as I walk up this hill, I'm reminded of probably one of my favorite Fright Fest stories of all time. So, like I already mentioned, we used to like to walk through the park at the end of the night, and one night we were walking through the park. I was with a group of my coworkers, including my friend Roy, who I'm still really good friends with to this day, and for many years, Roy was the werewolf here at Fright Fest. So we were walking down the hill. We were actually coming down the hill right here, and we noticed in front of us a female guest who was all by herself. She was walking right here, and she kept looking back at us, and it was obvious that she was scared, so we took off after her. But Roy took off towards this railing and jumped over, and he told me later that as he was jumping over this railing, he realized he had no idea what was on the other side. Like, he didn't know how far of a drop it was. But I just remember running over to the railing, and I still have a very vivid memory of seeing Roy running down this hill at full speed, unable to stop. And as he got to the bottom, he jumped over that railing and cut her off just as she was coming around the corner. And she dropped to the ground and let out this huge scream and then flew up and took off down the rest of the hill. And we were all just standing over here laughing so hard we were crying. It's still one of the funniest things I remember seeing in all of my years working at Fright Fest. And when I worked up here at the top of the hill, sometimes we had to use the restroom. So these are the restrooms that we would use. And again, we weren't supposed to scare people when we were in the restroom, but of course I always did. Whenever there were people in here, I would chase them out. Now, something that's changed up here for the better is how dark it is. When I first started working up here, they always had the lights on full blast, and it looked awful. And for years we complained that they needed to make it darker. Eventually they got these jack-o'-lantern covers that went over the lights, and that made it a little bit better, but now they have it nice and dark and it looks really good up here. However, there's not too much fog, and this was always a really foggy area, so I don't know, I guess you got to take the good with the bad. Now over here, this used to be the Orient Express, and this was another one of my favorite places to chase people into. Again, we weren't really supposed to chase people in the lines, but this was a really good place to trap people. I would trap them here in the queue, and they had nowhere to go. So, I mean, what are you supposed to do? If we listened to all their rules, we would have never had any fun. Now, another thing that I used to really like to do was when I was a slider, I used to like to come over to this hill. I would get running full speed and then drop to my knees and go sliding down the hill at people. That was always a lot of fun. And in one of my other Magic Mountain videos, I showed a clip of when I trapped a kid right here in the queue line for Ninja. That's something that actually happened quite often, but that time in particular was really bad. I feel like I had him trapped there for at least 20 minutes before an adult finally came and got him. And this is, of course, Willoughby's Haunted Mansion. It's been up here for years. Some of you might remember this as the Magic Pagoda. Finally, here's a scare actor. He's just kind of hanging out, not really doing much right now, but he's the first one that I've seen up here so far. And when I worked up here, I would say there was always at least like 10 of us up here at all times, so they're definitely lacking in the actors. Now, the line for Willoughby's Haunted Mansion, that used to go back here and wrap around the Sky Tower, and when it did, I used to like to work the line. I would go back there and walk through it, and when I did that, I wasn't really being scary. It was more of a comedy thing. I would walk through and like make fun of people, and I really enjoyed doing that. Again, something we weren't supposed to do, but the guests really liked it, so I did it. Now there's another scare actor, but he's going to take a break. Right back there is, that was our break room, and that's where he's headed. Now one year they moved the scare zone to this area, and this area didn't used to look like this. Before Tatsu was here, it was just one set of steps, and then it was a long narrow path that went downhill. They dressed up either side of the path to look like a graveyard, put some fog machines, and they had us in here scaring. Now the one thing that I remember from that year was one night a group of troublemakers came walking through, and they were shoulder checking all of the actors, and one of my coworkers was about 6'4", and when they shoulder checked him, he knocked the guy through the fence into the graveyard area. I was standing right next to him, and next thing I knew, this guy was just laying in the grass in the cemetery area. It was crazy, and needless to say, that coworker did not return the next day. That was his final night working at Fright Fest. And yet another area that I worked at here during Fright Fest, this is right in between Tatsu and Katie's Kettle. And what I remember about working in this area was one night, about 20 minutes before the park closed, it started to rain. It was just a light rain. So the supervisor said, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and leave you out here. Just don't chase anybody. Of course, we didn't listen. We started chasing people, and people were slipping and falling left and right. It was really dangerous. So as you continue walking in that same direction, you end up on this path that goes back behind Revolution. And this was actually the very first area that I ever worked at my first year at Fright Fest. Now, it didn't look anything like this at the time. There were no black lights or anything like that. It was just, hello. Hi. Oh, thank you very much. Anyways, there were no black lights or anything, just fog machines and us. That was it. And so, of course, a lot of memories right here because, like I said, this was the very first area I ever worked at. And there was actually a trash can over here that I started hiding behind, and I would bang on it when people would walk by, and I'd jump out at them. And then it kind of caught on. Some of the other workers started doing that too. You know, it's right, well, they replaced it with a plastic trash can. It was a metal trash can at the time. And we beat on it so hard the first weekend that by the second weekend, they had hung up a picture of it in the makeup department, and the trash can was all beat up, and it said, you know, that we were no longer allowed to hit the trash cans. Another thing that we used to like to do was jump up on this wall and run up there in between the trees, and then we would come running down and jump off the wall and scare people. That was really cool. We got in trouble for doing that too. I mean, we really weren't allowed to do anything that was fun. And finally, one more area that I worked at during Fright Fest. I think this is the last one. They put us here for 1 year, and this was probably my least favorite area that I ever worked in. The only reason that I liked working in this area was right over there. That's where they get arrested at the end of National Lampoon's Vacation, which I've said many times is my favorite movie. So I enjoyed working in that same area that was used in Vacation. But other than that, I really didn't like this area. And this is another different area. I think they started doing this a few years back. This was never decorated when I worked here. It's kind of a cool area. It's nice and open. Lots of room to run around. They got lots of fog out here. They got it, as you can see, all lit up red. The only problem is I don't think there's a lot of traffic that goes through here. So not really a lot of people to scare. Maybe we were supposed to go this way. It looks a little cooler if you're going the other way. You can see the signs and everything. All right, here's another silly memory for you. So the very last year that I worked at Fright Fest, I kind of just didn't care anymore, and I was really just doing whatever I wanted. And I found a purple trench coat and wardrobe. I put that on. I found this like purple headband thing that I tied around. I got somebody to let me into a locked up area and wardrobe, and I got a hold of the Joker's purple shoes, and I got one of the airbrush artists to paint a Prince symbol on the side of my face. And I just walked around the whole rest of the month saying that I was Prince. I didn't even really scare anybody. I was just walking around singing Prince songs. So one night we left our area and we were just roaming around the park, which we totally weren't supposed to be doing. And we ended up right here at the Orient Express, and they were in the middle of loading it. and the guy was talking into the microphone, telling everybody the rules of riding the Orient Express. I walked up, took it out of his hand, and asked everybody on board if they knew who Prince was, and then I made everybody sing Raspberry Beret with me. And there's actually a really bad cell phone video of this. I just cannot find it anywhere. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyways, that's my memory of the Orient Express. You know, I haven't seen them use this bandstand in forever. They used to actually use this during Fright Fest. They would put bands on here, and I remember one year we were walking past here and there was kind of like a horror punk band, like some younger kids, and we stopped and we were talking to them, and I told them that the next night I was going to come back in full makeup and I was going to sing a song with them, and for whatever reason I never did. I don't know why, but so if you're watching, I apologize for that. So I think that's most of my ridiculous memories from working at Fright Fest. Of course, there's a ton, but those are my favorites at least, except for the time that I ended up taking one of the mule carts from the maintenance area and driving it all around the backstage area in full makeup. Of course, I was definitely not supposed to be doing that. When some of the supervisors found out, they actually, they made a joke of it and, you know, were asking if I could make deliveries and stuff. Yeah, I don't know how I didn't get fired for these things. So since I did this whole series on Magic Mountain and ended it with my memories of Fright Fest, I thought I would end it by giving you my current opinion on Magic Mountain. And now this is just my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you watching are going to have a different opinion, and that's okay. I'm just giving my opinion, maybe for the people that have never been there and they're wondering what it's like today. So I gotta say that after going back and making these videos, I really have no plans on returning to Magic Mountain anytime in the near future. That park is continuing to go downhill. It really wasn't a great park in the 90s, and it's got a lot worse. I don't really know how. It seems like no matter what they do, things just don't get better. If you're somebody that just really loves roller coasters and thrill rides and you're looking for a place that has a lot of roller coasters, then by all means, Magic Mountain might be the place for you. If you're somebody that's looking for like a family park, you know, a nice place with kind of a relaxed atmosphere, definitely not the place for you. You know, Magic Mountain, you're going to run into a lot of profanity, graffiti, things that are broken, run down. So yeah, definitely not a nice family park. And I think what was the final straw for me is security. I've mentioned this before. I've had problems with Magic Mountain security ever since the very first time that I went there, and it continued even all through the years that I worked there. I would have problems with them, and then I would show my employee ID and they would leave me alone. The problems have not stopped. That last visit where we filmed for Fright Fest, we had problems with security going in. They went through my bag without my permission after it went through the x-ray machine. And then they went through my wife's bag, and she had this marker in there that she uses for work, this expensive marker. And they told her, you can't bring a marker into the park, which is not posted anywhere. That's never been a problem. She always has that marker in her bag. And they said, you can't bring it in. And so she had no choice. It was either she gave them the marker or we take a 20-minute walk back to the car and a 20-minute walk back to the park. You know, when I was a teenager, I guess it didn't bother me as much because we were just there to ride roller coasters and look at girls. And so I didn't really care about the security. I mean, I did, but I was able to get over it. But I think now I'm a grown up in my 40s. I'm a dad, and I don't have the time or the patience to deal with that. So I would just rather not. And I mean, just to kind of give you an idea, all of the times that I've been to Disneyland, you know, I've been there a lot. I have never once had a problem with security at Disneyland. I mean, not one time. Even when I was a teenager and I would go there with blue hair and, you know, all of that, never had one single incident with security. But probably, I would say 90% of the times I've been to Magic Mountain, I've had an incident with security. So yeah, I just don't have the time or patience for that. Now, as far as Fright Fest goes, it pains me to say this, but all of the years that I worked there, I thought that we were the best park. I took a lot of pride in working at Fright Fest. And I think the reason why was because we had Scott Ramp and the Scream team doing our makeup. And at that time, not Scary Farm just used rubber masks. And so for us to have like an actual movie makeup artist doing our makeup, I thought that was amazing. And to me, that made us the best Halloween park. Looking back at it now, I see that Magic Mountain was definitely towards the bottom of the list. Again, the makeup was top notch. but everything else, like the mazes, the atmosphere, we had some really good actors, some good, some bad. But yeah, I would say Fright Fest was always towards the bottom, and really it still is. I'm sorry, no offense to anybody that works there. Like I said, I worked there for many years and I took a lot of pride in it, and I know that a lot of you probably do as well. So no offense to any of you. This is just my opinion. Anyways, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching this series on Magic Mountain. Don't forget to keep Halloween alive, and I'll see you next time.
Let's go! The lost boat, the hat and the girl.